Welcome to Peacebuilding Initiatives, where we explore the transformative power of dialogue, cross-cultural understanding, and collective empathy in building more peaceful and connected communities. I'm your host, José Barzola. Thank you for joining us. In today's episode, we're diving into a topic that's both timely and essential, why mediating early matters, and the value of learning mediation skills, whether you're navigating conflict in the workplace, in your family, or within your community. Understanding how and when to mediate can make all the difference. I think this is so timely with the holidays upon us. um, I'm honored to be joined by Tracey S. Wiltgen, who's the Executive Director of the Mediation Center of the Pacific, a nonprofit organization that assists nearly 13,000 individuals each year. Tracey holds a JD, Juris Doctor from the William S. Richardson School of Law, and brings over 3 decades of experience in mediation and conflict resolution. Throughout her career, Tracey has helped advance the field of mediation across Hawaii, the US, the United States mainland, the Asia Pacific region. She's consulted with organizations including the Hawaii State Judiciary, the United States Navy Pacific region, and the Federated States of Micronesia to design and implement effective dispute resolution programs. Beyond her consulting work, she provides mediation services, leads training workshops for government agencies and businesses, and is a frequent writer and speaker on dispute prevention and resolution. She will actually be a speaker, it's a little shameless plug, at the upcoming Conflict Resolution Alliance annual meeting this Friday. And I'll provide information and summary about that. Um, in 2003, she also co-founded the Peacemaker Committee within the Rotary Club of Honolulu, further demonstrating her commitment to fostering peaceful communities. Tracey, thank you so much for being here. It is such a pleasure to have you today.
Thank you,
And I know
José.
uh, I do much value your time. So thank you so much, especially for folks that we're doing this on a Monday and folks who think about like how busy Monday can be. But I think it's all about intentionality. And I greatly, just from the head start, just want to thank you. I appreciate you so much. But we'll get started so folks can listen in and learn a little bit about your background, and maybe you can, as we start, you telling us a bit about your journey and how did you first get involved in mediation and conflict resolution?
Oh, that's a good question, Jose, because if you hear my journey, people initially think, wow, that doesn't make sense. But to me, it was a clear path, although it wasn't at the time. So I originally was a speech pathologist in our school system here in Hawaii. And so communication was still my passion at the time. It was helping children with disabilities learn more effective communication. It was also working with parents, helping them learn how to be better models and work with their children. And in that experience, it was many years ago, there was I started seeing a lot of disconnect and actually conflict between parents of children with special needs and the school system. And at one point, I was actually called in as an expert witness for a case of a little boy I was working with. And without going into the background of the case, what really struck me is that parents and schools should be working together because everybody's there to best assist each child develop, be successful in the school system. So it seemed they needed a better way to work together. And at the time, I didn't know what that was. I just knew that they needed a better way. And shortly after that, I left and I went to law school where I learned about mediation. And I thought, this is amazing. And I was fortunate. I was working in a law firm to pay for law school. And I found the Neighborhood Justice Center, which is now, of course, the Mediation Center of the Pacific. But back then it was Neighborhood Justice Center, and became a volunteer mediator. So between learning about mediation in school and becoming a volunteer mediator, and I'd mediate night and weekends, all types of cases, I thought, this is the way. This is such an amazing process and is such a better way for people to talk and resolve their issues. And I thought, this is what the school system needs. And I was very fortunate. I was mediating a lot and helping with trainings. And so I was asked to apply to be the director of training for NJC at the time, now the Mediation Center of the Pacific. And it was a new position. They wanted somebody to train the mediators, as I had been helping with, but also to be entrepreneurial, to train others in businesses and government agencies. And so I took the job and never looked back. It's been such a wonderful journey to be part of a great organization and a community of people who believe in resolving conflict through mediation. Sorry, long answer to a short question.
No, no, that's really beautiful. Thank you so much. Just because I think what I love about your journey is that it's not your typical like where people always think of like, oh, the career that I want, what's the degree, what's in retrospect and reflection, we could see how it all, but initially it may have not appeared that way. And I think that's just a really good lesson for folks who are out there who are maybe pondering like, maybe they're like, I'm just studying this and maybe that job field's not looking so great right now. Why don't we explore mediation? Why don't we explore, especially because I feel as though, I mean, those communication skills are so transferable. Um, and I find that a lot of folks, I think, have the initial training. I mean, everyone I like to think has some special person that they can go to. So they've learned how to practice some active listening and reframing. And so it's just a matter of taking those skill sets and they're transferable skills that can be very valuable in the mediation process. And
Yeah.
so I'm trying to help you recruit here. So yeah, but
No, absolutely. The skills, as you know, are applicable in everything we do, personally and professionally, in every job. If my theory and vision is always if everybody learned mediation and negotiation from kindergarten, first grade on, think about what a different world we'd be in and how everyone would interact differently, because it's really about having tools and skills, and not everybody grows up with them. I know I didn't. I mean, I grew up in a household where my parents fought all the time, so I hated conflict. I was an avoider and accommodator because I couldn't control it, and I realized, as I was getting older and taking on jobs, that being a conflict avoider or the ultimate accommodator is not always helpful. And so, but I didn't have any other tools and skills, and we rely on what we've learned. And then when I learned about mediation and started developing the skills, it was like, this is amazing. I can problem solve. I can walk into anything and pull out my different mediator tools to see what tool is going to work best in this situation. And so that's a very different mindset and comfort level. So, yes, everybody would benefit from the skills, and we'd all be interacting differently because we'd have tools and skills to say, okay, I'm dealing with Jose and he's a peacemaker like me. So we're not going to just keep reframing and summarizing what each other says. We might need to be a little more focused, which would be a little bit different if you were a major competitor. And so I know, I need to be less combative with you, listen a little gently, but be more focused on problem solving because you don't want to waste time. So it's really, being at a place where you have tools and then you learn how to pick your tools.
I love that. One thing that kind of just resonated with me was, especially if you're trying to sell something to someone, that we put on like the shiny stuff and it's almost like the icing on the cake. How do we sell this product to people? But if we were already practicing active listening and we were at that level that you're, this ideal world that we want to strive toward, um, we'd actually be having like some really good, insightful conversations about the product as opposed to just trying to get a sale. I like that. Thank you. So it seems like things just kind of click in this field. I mean, my follow-up question would have been like, what has kept you passionate in it for over 30 years now?
There is always something to learn. I think I've decided that one of the qualities of mediators that we have in common is we're lifelong learners and we like to be challenged mentally, academically, and learn. And that's part of the beauty of being a mediator is there's always something more to learn. no situation is the same. You may mediate in a specific area. So for domestic mediators who mediate divorce cases, yes, okay, people are going through a divorce, the laws are same, but every couple and every family is different. The dynamics are going to be different. And so it tests your ability to be effective as a mediator. And then there's always new things with mediation. It's been an amazing field. And when you think about it, when it first really came into vogue back in the 70s, it was more focused for community. That's why you had neighborhood justice centers across the country. But then it was quickly embraced by the courts and then the legal profession. And everybody was turning it into their own type of process that fit into their arena. And there was a lot of maybe conflict about what's the right approach. And really, it was more, from my perspective, about an evolving field. And it really wasn't a field, but it's become a field. And with a lot of different approaches, a lot of different tools. And of course, as we've incorporated technology and that grows, there's new ways of doing things. So there's always something to learn. And that's what's kept me passionate. And of course, with working for a community mediation center, a nonprofit organization, our focus is addressing the needs of the community. And the community has huge needs. And when we can come together and develop programs that address those needs to help make our community a little stronger and a little bit better, that also is part of my passion, is making a difference. You know, I believe that we all should give back. I feel very fortunate that I grew up in Hawaii, that it is a really, really special place. And I want to make sure that I'm giving back to the community and hopefully leaving it with a little bit of a better place. So that's also what's kept me so involved. Yeah.
No, thank you. Yeah, I think you're absolutely correct. You have to have this desire for learning and being able to truly, even if the situation resembles something that you've done in the past, there's going to be something different about it. Uh, and yeah, I mean, I've only been here in Hawaii a little over 10 years now, which seems like a lot of time, but I always keep saying I've only been like, I think it'll still be like 30 years and I'll be like, I've only been here a little bit. Because I feel like there's so much to learn. I don't, there's, yeah. And that's the beauty of it. So thank you so much. So as far as we wanted to talk about mediating early matters and why is it important to address conflict early before it escalates?
I'm really glad you asked that question. That has been my big platform for the last few years. Mediation is applicable anytime. And so once lawsuits are filed, certainly mediation is appropriate. We've proven that repeatedly. However, what I saw in my role at MCP is some of the cases that would come in, people would be so entrenched. And one of the cases that I won't go into detail about, this was a few years ago, and it was an employment dispute. And it had festered for so long. It was a situation where, and when I had talked with the CEO, he knew there was a problem, but he was busy. You know, he had a successful organization he was running, and he kept thinking it would work itself out. And this was with a senior manager. But people under this person, kept resigning and leaving. So that was, a red flag. But then along came a team of younger folks. They attended a workshop about speaking up about problems in the workplace, and they spoke up. And so it forced the leadership in the organization to take a closer look. And then some additional things happened where the manager got really upset. CEO just went in and fired this person. And after a year, after many long fought lawsuits, the person got their job back, came back, and now you had a workplace of 5 people in a department who didn't trust each other, who hated each other, who expected management to protect them, and all kinds of allegations about each other. So this is the situation I get asked to mediate. And And I just thought, wow, after listening to all of them, had that been addressed, had they been able to have a conversation way before it got to that point, they might have understood the challenges that the manager was experiencing and why that person behaved the way they did. They might have come up with a way to more effectively work together rather than imploding a department, which, of course, when you have a whole department imploding, it impacts everybody else in that organization. And so, and that's just one very extreme example, but a lot of the cases that I'd see, and I just thought, if people had the skill sets and the company culture to address issues early, whether it's we tried to mediate, we tried to negotiate amongst ourselves and it didn't work. So now we know we should try mediation now before it gets to that level where I'm filing lawsuits, I'm filing legal complaints. I'm going to EEO, those type of things. And people always have those options if it's warranted. But if they can come in at that early stage and be able to negotiate when people are a little more level-headed before it turns into something bigger, there's a greater chance of working out agreements, maintaining working relationships. As I remind people, it's not trying to make people like each other, but if it's in a workplace or if it's in some kind of working relationship, it's about keeping that relationship so you can continue to move forward, such as in our school system with the special education arena. Parents and teachers may not like each other, but if they have a successful working relationship to focus on the needs of the child, to help that child succeed, that's what they need. It's not about, I think you're a really cool teacher, or I really like you now, a parent. If that's an outcome, wonderful, but that's really not the purpose. So when these things can get addressed early, generally there's a higher likelihood that it's going to get resolved, and it's also going to preserve that working relationship. So I really, and I've seen it work when organizations or groups or individuals make that commitment. And that's one of the things that I'm really excited about now is our Department of Education here in Hawaii has committed to creating a culture of early problem solving. And to do that, they are asking where we have been, the Mediation Center of the Pacific have been providing training for every single administrator, giving them informal mediation skills, and for every other staff member, from teachers to secretaries to coaches, conflict resolution skills, so that they can think in terms of using these tools when they interact with each other and resolve things before they get to that next level. And I just really commend them, and I encourage every organization to consider doing the same.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. As I was listening to you, I just find it fascinating how, like, with our youth, we try to, like, tell them to plan ahead. If you see some kind of, issues, say something. But I don't know if maybe as we get older, as larger organizational structures, whether it's the bureaucracy or I don't know what it is, but somehow it's forgotten. So, and I'm glad. This is exciting to hear that you're engaging with the DOE and uh, teaching them those conflict resolution mediation skill sets, which are ever so needed. It reminded me just briefly of peer mediation programs that used to be so actively. So maybe that'll be something down the line if they ever feel comfortable again. There are a couple, but we can always have more.
I think there is that possibility, recognizing that the skills are so important. Part of, going back to your comment, what happens to us when we become adults, people are busy. People have so much pressure on them, taking care of families, trying to make ends meet, trying to be successful in high pressure jobs, no matter what type of work you do, and trying to manage. And so we forget the tools and we respond with our emotions, and that's human. But when organizations rethink these things. And I think it makes people start thinking again about peer mediation as well. And so maybe this time, I think with peer mediation, when it was so vibrant, it was, yes, this is what the kids need. But really, to be successful, it needed to be that whole school model where everybody was walking the walk and walking the talk, not just we need the kids to do it. And I remember at one conference many years ago, we had some high school mediators participating, and it was them. They said, we're mediating. We know it. We've embraced this. We need to see the grown-ups do it. And
I love that.
right, it really struck all of us. And so now my hope is, and this is the discussion, the approach is having all the adults develop and use the skills, then going back to the students. And so then the students will be able to look at models and say, oh, this is why I'm doing this. And they're resolving their conflicts that way. So we should too. So that's my hope and my vision. And I believe it can happen. Yeah.
Thank you. That's wonderful. It's great to hear. I mean, I have to say, just from being a parent myself, like in general, just interacting not only with my kids but also their friends, like they're just so brutally honest, which is very refreshing and a good like wake up for the various inundated things that we put in our calendars that we juggle. So it is very refreshing to get that. So I'm glad that the students shared that. Also, what you're doing with the DOE reminds me of how I've noticed past couple years. I try to keep reminding myself, like we have so many systems in place in our society, certifications and things, but it's always like fulfilling different standards. Like, oh, you have to teach math. Okay, you need to learn how to learn maths and then teaching skills, that kind of stuff. Uh, or one example I have is always like, I had a student who wanted to be a financial planner, and so she took all the studied and tests for to be a financial planner, but nowhere along the process are there like learning conflict management skills.
Right.
You go get your driver's license. There's no lessons in conflict management skills, and then they're like, here you go have fun with road rage or something. But it's just so many areas of our society that would benefit from the skill sets. So
Every area. And think about, like you were just saying, you go get your driver's license. So I'll share a recent story. I went to renew my driver's license and I went online because now you can make an appointment. But everywhere, all of the satellite, right, where they were all filled and my license was going to expire. So somebody told me, oh, you should go to this one in this community because in the afternoon, it's usually pretty empty and you can just walk in. So I said, great. So a couple weeks ago, I did. I walked in, I found it, I walked in, and it was pretty empty. And there's the lady behind the desk, and she says, do you have an appointment? And I said, oh, no, I don't. And she said, well, you're supposed to have an appointment. And I'm like, oh, I don't have an appointment. Now I'm thinking, well, wait a minute, this place is empty. And I had already been told. And it's tempting to start arguing. Like, excuse me, this place is empty. Why are you asking me if I have an appointment? But needless to say, I had my good conflict resolution hat on. And I said, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know I was supposed to have an appointment. She said, well, when does your driver's license expire? I said, 2 weeks. She goes, oh, hold on, just hold on. And so I go, okay. And then she miraculously got me in. Excuse me. 2 minutes later, I had my renewed license. And she didn't have to do that. But had she had conflict resolution skills, we wouldn't have had to gone through that scenario. So thank goodness I had my conflict resolution hat on because I could have been combative. And my guess is she would have thrown me out and I wouldn't have gotten my driver's license renewed. But we encounter that every day. Same thing when I tried to, I had a flight to a neighbor island. It got canceled. The work I was doing over there got canceled. I had to reschedule. I got on the phone with the person and they immediately started telling me how much more it was going to cost. And I said, well, I've already paid for the ticket and I'm on your website and I know what the flight costs and it doesn't cost any more. In fact, it costs a little less than what I originally paid. And they proceeded to tell me, no, it was going to cost $250 more. And I said, well, I'm sorry, but I'm looking at your website. And they hung up on me. And I thought, wow, this person needs conflict resolution skills. So you're absolutely right. Everything we do can benefit from having those skills and tools.
And I gotta say, you just I'm thinking of different scenarios where a lot of it's just having some trying to think of like it's just genuine communication skills on how to treat each other. I mean, kind of like that golden rule, how others would like to be treated. Um, when brief story was part of it's like negotiation skills. That's really what it kind of comes down to as well. You kind of have assessed like this person's already having a bad day. Do I want to meet them and try to top it? Or maybe I can like through a nice calm tone and listen. Maybe they haven't had someone practice active listening with them today or in a couple of days. And that's what you're doing right there. And so you're settling their nerves and they're probably like, least I can do is help this person out. She just needs her license. Just requires a
Exactly.
couple strokes of the keys here.
Yeah,
Amazing.
and what's important, one of the things that you said is we're meeting people where they're at because we don't know where people are at. We
Yeah.
don't know what their morning has been like. We don't know that they just got a diagnosis. Their child just had an accident, that their mother is upset with them, that they just lost their best friend. We don't know what's going on in people's lives when we encounter them and why they react to us. So, as you said, if we meet them at that same combative level, then it's only going to escalate. It's not going to improve the situation. So, being the bigger person and knowing those skills and knowing this intellectually, we make a choice. We have the ability to make a choice to put ourselves in charge of us and respond differently to hopefully be able then to have a positive, constructive interaction with this other person. Um, and that is one of the extra beauties of why we do what we do is because we do take these skills into our own lives and we should, and shame on us if we don't walk the walk and talk the
Yes.
talk and we go media upon others and then walk in and be horrible to everybody else. That would not bode well. So I think that we have a duty and a responsibility to be ambassadors of mediation, not just talking about it, but modeling it and recognizing, we're all human beings and we're all going to have our moments, but recognizing that and going, oops, sorry, that isn't the way I should have handled that. I shouldn't have expressed myself that way. And then come back with a more effective way of doing it. So yeah.
Thank you. Shifting a little back to mediation, can you are there any particular warning signs that a conflict should be mediated rather than later? I mean, I'm
Yeah.
assuming it's not like everything goes to mediation. So, yeah, just wondering what are some warning signs that folks can kind of keep an eye out for?
I think that's a really good question. I think when there's an issue and you attempt to intervene, so let's go back to the workplace. So there's a conflict between two coworkers, and one coworker attempts to use conflict resolution skills and say, let's have a conversation and talk about this. So maybe they make an attempt. Maybe they even come up with a temporary agreement, but then a week later, the issue is back. Maybe management steps in, and this is typical. What managers do if they're not thinking in terms of conflict resolution skills, they step in and they tell the two people how to resolve their issue, which usually doesn't work well. But this is what happens. So maybe that happens and the issue is back. So now I'm thinking, okay, this issue is, it's that people have made an attempt to address it. I've made an attempt to address it. Maybe I have informal mediation skills and I attempt to address it informally, but it's still, that's what I would say. That's when formal mediation needs to kick in. So it isn't just, hey, there's two people in a conflict, we better run to mediation. If that was the case, every CEO, every condo association would hate mediation because everybody would be going to mediation all the time. And that's not the purpose of it. It's looking at, was there something tried? Did it work? Is there another way to intervene before it starts escalating and then move it into formal mediation? One of the things I share, when I teach managers and leaders in organizations informal mediation skills. I tell them, there's a process, there's skills, and the art, as you know, Jose, is helping people come to their own solutions. And that's one of the things I love about mediation. And that is the art. And when you do that and help people come to their own solutions, then the question becomes, how are you going to resolve things in the future with each other? So it doesn't keep going back to the manager, to the CEO. And so that's part of what you're trying to accomplish, is resolving the immediate issue, but also helping people talk to each other in a different way and interact in a different way so that they're able to do that on their own. And that's going to be huge because managers spend 45% of their day intervening in conflict. So if they have a way of helping employees resolve their own conflict that then leads to these employees in the future will be dealing with each other on their own, that has now freed that manager up to focus on all the other things that they really want to be focused on.
You may see that I'm smiling and laughing a little bit, just remembering from my own experience of the one thing that I'll just share a brief story. I used to work in financial aid. I did it for about a year almost. It's probably the most stressful, one of the most stressful spaces working in higher education because everyone's there. Nobody ever goes there to just say hello. Everyone goes there because they didn't get their money. Or
Oh,
when is their
okay.
money coming? Why did it not get as much as they expected? And so and I was in a manager position where I had about, I think, 18 people reporting to me, like staff. And so, yeah, I remember I would go in at 7 a.m., leave at 7 p.m. The office was open from 9 to 7. I would go in early at 7, so I'd have at least 2 hours to like work on my work because the rest of the day
Wow.
was just dealing with people and their issues.
And angry people.
Yes, yes.
Were you already
So,
trained as a peacemaker at that time?
um, I did get, yeah, I had gotten trained as a mediator before that. And I think similar to what you said earlier, when I got trained as a mediator, I learned terminology. That's what I always share. I realized once more a similar household. Like I was doing this stuff when I was like 5, 6. I was like, A, what B is saying, and B, what A is saying. And even, yeah, when I as I reflect upon, and I encourage folks to always practice, retrospection, reflections, and or journaling, however they do it. um my mindset was always thinking a little bit outside the box, trying to figure out where to build those bridges. Even in undergrad, different I was involved in some cultural organizations, and we would only come together when something bad would happen. And I'd be like, oh, this is great. We're coming together. But like, why are we waiting for something bad to happen to start collaborating? Why are we not doing this consistently? And so yeah. So thankfully I did have the skill sets. So um unfortunately you can't send frustrated parents and students to mediation in financial aid. You just practice the active listening, the reframing, and then seeing what I can do. But yeah.
So I would think though, in that type of workplace where you're dealing with angry people every day, all day long, and but by using the mediation skills, the reframing, the active
Yeah.
listening, to help them feel a little bit better so that you can best assist them. I would think, and correct me if I'm wrong, that that would help you as well manage being in that stressful situation all day long, as opposed to I didn't have those skills. So now I'm just like, I got one more angry person in front of me and I want to blast them and I just want to hurry up and tell them, I can't do this. Here's all I can do for you. But which then you're really going to be angry by the end of the day and wound up when you walked out. But by using those skills and helping people maybe be a little bit calmer, a little bit more rational, it also has a side benefit to yourself. Or am I completely wrong? Is it
No,
still
you're
better?
absolutely correct. No, yeah, I think I always joke and say like, I'm an eternal optimist, and a lot of what I do is trying to see the perspectives. And so obviously it wasn't they're just like upset they didn't get their money. There's a story behind that, as like it's
Right.
like maybe they're dealing with other hardships and having to like uh get to school. I mean, many of them didn't commute. They were like traveling 2, 3 hours to get to school every day. It's like, so yeah, you have that empathy, that compassion. And so, yeah, no, I mean, I was, if anything, I was just happy to be, I guess, a sounding board. And there was that camaraderie because we did have a team of like 20 folks or so. And so I think people understood the space we were in and the service we were providing. Um, but no, I do remember occasionally. Yeah, will say. I know I joked earlier and said like rarely do people just stop by to say hello, but I did get occasionally, you know, people would stop by and just like leave a little thank you card or
Okay.
just like a cookie or something. So and it's not about. It's just the act. I mean, so even if they just send an email, which is can go a really long way. Just to, I think in general, we're all human, and feeling acknowledged for what you do, which I mean, it's a job. So technically, they didn't need to do that, but they went out of their way because they thought it was the right thing to do. And so, yeah, I think it just it helps to not make it feel like it's a job, but it's a service. So I think if we shift it to that mentality of we're providing a service, and not a service that is just one piece of the puzzle to help these students succeed. I mean, hopefully it's one thing that then they don't have to stress about this when they should be focusing and studying and about whatever they're studying and exams they have to take. So yeah, so yeah, so you're correct. Thank you. But no, and going back to like, the ever ongoing journey of learning, um, the reason why I went into financial aid was because in my silly mind, I'm always like, how do we lean toward discomfort? How do I explore areas that I haven't? And that was one area of higher education that I had always kind of stayed away from. But then this opportunity came up, and I was like, sure. And thankfully, it was only a year. Then another opportunity came up after that, but I very much value that experience and the camaraderie built between the office.
Mhm.
Birthdays came around. Well, we got to plan a cake. We got to, you know. So yeah, it's you celebrate people, right? And I think those are great signs of good organizations or offices where it's like, oh, we celebrate the birthdays. We celebrate, oh, someone had someone pass away. Okay, how can we step in to help them out? Or, you know, uh, building community, going beyond like, okay, we're here between these hours to do this act that or this service. So because we're going to spend many times more time in our jobs than we do even in our homes. So
Absolutely.
how do we blend the two if possible?
Right. And building relationships and positive work environment and by sharing, little celebrations that you share, whether, like you said, it's birthdays or accomplishments or things. So, and reframing it as a service rather than a job or work. Just that alone. People are like, oh, I hate work. But if you say, I'm providing a service to people, uh, and makes it really different. It isn't
Yeah.
something I go in and it's just this drudgery. It's I'm helping make a difference in people's lives, and even in a in a financial aid office, I mean, that's huge. They wouldn't be able to go to school without the financial aid. Without school and the financial aid, they wouldn't be able to feed their families. So
Yeah.
reframing it and building a positive working relationship, that's huge. And wouldn't that be great if every workplace had that view and was able to accomplish that?
Yeah, no, most definitely, most definitely, and I gotta say, I really do cherish going back to those relationships because I'm thinking back to like, oh, some of my students, like it's like 15 years now, and I still in connection, and one of them's like finishing up their doctorate, and just like being able to celebrate them from afar, it's great. It's like this extended family, extended community that's not restricted by borders per se. And yeah, we're all
Yeah.
interconnected in some way. So thank you. Thank you.
And well, and
Yeah.
especially in Hawaii, right? And
Yes.
we have grown so much and we're so busy, we are still a very small community, and we end up interacting with each other in various ways at various levels. So you may think you'll never meet somebody, and then next thing you know, you're interacting with them, or somebody that you dealt with many years ago all of a sudden comes back into your life. And uh,
What
I
what
find that
I
all the time. Yeah.
what I love is that the longer not even just in Hawaii on this planet is the world gets a little bit smaller.
Yes.
Someone's
Yeah.
like, "Can I connect you?" Or it turns out someone happens to be, especially in Hawaii, it's like 1 degree or less of separation. Someone's aunties and uncle that, yeah, it's been really great to just it makes the world a little bit smaller, and I think that makes it more comfortable as well.
Yeah.
So shifting, I know we were talking about the value of learning mediation skills. What would you say are some of the core skills or mindsets that mediation training helps develop? I think we mentioned a couple of them, but I wonder if there's other ones that.
Well, definitely, we know that the key, the most powerful tool we have is listening. And we also know that 20%, most people only use 20% of their listening skills. And good examples is think about, at the end of the day, you're in the kitchen and you're trying to make dinner. You might have the laundry going. You're thinking about some work things, and your child comes in and they're behind you and looking up at your back because you're at the sink chopping up vegetables or something, and they're talking and they're telling you something that's really important to them, and you're up there chopping away going, uh-huh, 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 and yet they're looking at your back, and to them it's like, wow, mom or dad's not really listening to me. So that also gets interpreted, my story isn't that important. And of course that's not what we intend, but we do that to each other all the time. You're sitting at your computer in your office and somebody comes in to talk to you, and you have your face to the keyboard, and you occasionally may look over at them. And so are you really picking up and hearing their story and sending the message that I really want to know what's going on with you, and hear deeply? And so we know that that is such a powerful skill. And I tell people when they go through mediation training, these are skills you have, but we're going to use them in a slightly different way, or maybe polish them up in a way that you haven't been using them. And that deep listening, when you really take the time to hear somebody and understand what's going on for them, makes such a huge difference. And so all the skills we learn as mediators, but for me, that powerful listening, and we know, that all the skills really fall into that when we talk about, active listening versus, understanding nonverbal communication and responding, and presenting yourself in a way that says, I really want to hear you. I want you to trust me. And then it goes to the being empathetic, not agreeing with people, but just validating that what they're saying and what they're going through is real for them, to reframing, rather than telling them to stop using some of their language, to soften the language or reframe what their underlying interest is. Since generally, as people, we don't go into battle thinking this is my interest and this is what's important to me. It's more, I'm just really mad at you and I think you treated me badly. And so being able to reflect that, and then of course, summarizing back the key things that are important to people and doing all that great listening so that people feel heard, they feel respected, and it brings their emotions down. And then it makes them willing to listen to us. You know, it seems such a simple, easy concept. And yet we know every day that people don't listen to each other. And I want to just say, you know, I thought it was so hilarious. This was several months ago, and I was participating in a workshop. And one of the speakers started talking about, you know, I just learned something really interesting, that if you let the other person speak first, that then it's a better way to start a negotiation. And I thought, you got to be kidding. You mean you thought all this time that you should put out your idea first and then the other person is going to be willing to listen to you? But that's how this person was trained. And then I heard it again recently. It was like this whole new concept. Wow, listen first. And I thought, these are the basic core concepts we teach in mediation. You have to listen first, and you have to listen deeply and sincerely and really try and understand what's important to that other person. And when you do that, they're going to be more likely to listen to you and understand your perspective. So, and there's a lot of tools and skills in mediating, but to me, that's the core. And if you don't have that down, you're really missing something important. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you
How
for.
about you? How about you? What do you think is the most important tool in mediation?
I agree with I would say active listening, because people would be like, I'm listening. And I'm like, but are you actually practicing active listening? But I will say that the active listening, I just want to add to everything you already said, that when you're practicing active listening, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're trying to listen to the words. You're also, yes, you listen to the words, but you also listen to the nonverbals. You listen to, even if they're not saying anything, there's actually a lot of powerful things that people are saying when they're not saying something. When you're in that moment of silence, sharing that space,
So true.
those are such valuable lessons to me. And I find when I mediate, I a lot of actually not even mediation, just like in life, I live. What did the other day? I shared this with somebody. I was like, I find myself living in between the words.
Mm,
That's truly where I think the magic happens. Being able to connect with folks, whether it's like, oh, that little nonverbal thing you just said, or we just shared this moment of silence together, and that was quite powerful. Um, it's funny that what is it, the saying, like, actions are louder than the words, always rings in my mind, because yeah, I think it is, even with like my to bring in my dissertation, or my studies. I'm trying to look at, the nonverbals, because it's not just about what people are saying, because sometimes, whether people are having a rough day, or culturally, people just, maybe that rapport, the trust hasn't been built. Not everyone will just be blunt and say what's on their mind.
true.
And so how do you holistically try to assess? uh, but yeah, it's been a really beautiful journey and experience to be able to connect with folks and build those relationships. So yeah, I love that you are asking me questions. Thank you. This is actually one of the first times that we're going both ways. I love it.
I
Thank
can't
you.
help it. It's the mediator in me. You're supposed
No,
to ask
no,
questions.
it's great. It's great. I love it. Um, so you worked in, shifting a little to community impact. You worked in diverse settings, from Hawaii to the Asia Pacific. Uh, how do cultural values influence how people approach mediation and conflict?
That's a really good question. We
Mhm.
have to think about, you know, what their values are, how they approach conflict, what they're comfortable with, and be able to adapt. So, for example, collectivist cultures, like to be together and work through their issues. And as mediators, we know we use private and joint sessions, and some mediators rely completely on private sessions, caucuses going back and forth. So if you're working with somebody who's from a collectivist culture and prefers to be together, that's going to be difficult for them. And then, of course, you have the opposite. You have the more individualistic cultures who are more comfortable in the private sessions and are going to be very uncomfortable together. And I want to just share two different stories along that. So, and this was many years ago. A colleague of mine, we had never co-mediated together. We had a lot of respect for each other as mediators, but we had never co-mediated together. And we had this opportunity to co-mediate. And we went to, it was at a school. And so we were in this room, which unfortunately didn't lend itself to having a place where he and I could interact with each other and strategize. You know, it was a room, and it was between parent and school regarding their child. The dynamics, the unusual dynamics of the situation was that the parents of the child were divorced, and the principal had talked to me in advance and said, you know, I really like your model of mediation where you do these private sessions. And she goes, I'd really recommend that you keep us in private sessions because the parents don't get along. You know, they're divorced and they don't get along. So she says, so it's always really uncomfortable when they are arguing with each other. And of course, you know, it's not my job to get in between, and I don't want to get in between these two parents, but they're both parents of this child, so they both have the right to be there. And we really need to get these issues addressed because it was the end of the school year. It was going to be the summer, and there needed to be program pieces in place, and she was going away. So they really wanted to reach an agreement during this mediation. So I was like, okay. So we're in the mediation. We have mom and dad in the room, principal's in the other room, and we're doing the back and forth. And finally, the two parents were disagreeing with each other. So it was playing out exactly how the principal had described. But as we went back and forth trying to craft an agreement to meet the needs of this child, it was starting to get more emotional. And then finally, dad jumped up and started pounding on the table. And he's like, I am Hawaiian. I don't like all this back and forth stuff. That's not the way I address conflict. We should all be sitting at the table together and talking. You know, I don't know what you're saying in there. And it should be me saying to her, not you saying to her, this is how we're going to get this resolved. And all of a sudden, the wife or former wife says, yeah, I agree. Yeah, I don't like this either. We all need to come together and hammer this out, even though the two of them had been disagreeing about everything. Now they agreed on this. So I was like, wow. So I ran over into the other room where, my co-mediator, all we could do was go together. We didn't have any place to talk. So we go in the other room, and I said to the principal, you know, I know you really want this resolved, and it sounds like you have some ideas that, you know, would be, you know, possible solutions that the parents would be open to, but they really, really want you in the same room to hammer it out. She says, I'm Greek and my family likes to just hammer it out together, but here I'm the principal, so it wouldn't be appropriate for me to be hammering it out the way I typically would according to my culture. So now I've got to stay in separate rooms because I shouldn't be hammering it out like that with this parent. And I was like, okay. So that, wow. So I go back in and say, you know, as the principal, she feels it would be more productive. No, that's it. We're going to walk out. We don't meet together. We're walking out. So oh, wow. So I run back in. Now the parents are headed out to the parking lot. I ran back into the teacher and said, look, you really want to resolve this today, right? She says, yes. And I said, can we put your principal hat and your Greek culture on the side and focus here that the three of you want to have a conversation? And now dad is so mad, he's walking out. So I think if you're willing to let him just kind of berate you and you take it, and then I think we can refocus on how to resolve this. Would that work? And finally she's like, okay. Oh, are you sure? I go, yes. I said, otherwise they're gone. So she's like, okay. So I run back in the parking lot and said, folks, they're willing to meet together. Please come back. So I bring them all back in the room, and sure enough, Dad just read her the riot act. This isn't the way to solve things. We need to sit down together and talk about it. How important my kid is to me. To her credit, she sat there and said nothing, let him go. Then when he finally stopped, she's like, here's what I'd like to suggest. And they reached an agreement, and then they hugged, and then they agreed, we ever are having a conflict again, we're just going to stay in the same room. And it was, thank goodness it worked out, but it was such a good lesson about you need to respect how cultures want to resolve things, even if you're not comfortable being in the middle of it. That was what was right for them. And then you have other situations where I don't want to be in the same room with the other one because that's not comfortable for me. It is an honor and a privilege to be a mediator and insert yourself in somebody's issues, their difficulties they're going through in their life. And I want to be respectful to what's going to be the most comfortable for them. And so understanding culturally how they approach it and what they're comfortable with is so important. Yeah. And I won't even go into my other story. That one was long enough.
No, no. Well, that's an amazing story. Thank you for sharing. And it's one of those things that you're just it's I mean, I can sense the quick problem solving. There wasn't really much time for you to be like, let me deliberate and think this through for 30 minutes. You just have to be like, what's going to work best for these folks? And yeah,
Yeah. And he made it clear. I mean, it was easy because he made it very clear.
yeah.
Where other times there's going to be subtleties. It goes back to your nonverbal communication. If I see somebody very, very hesitant and I'm thinking, oh, they should come together and have a conversation, I need to tune into that and in a private session ask them, are you comfortable coming together? What's
Mm,
going to help you? What's going to be comfortable for you? And so helping them explain to you, what they want, maybe why they want it. So, because sometimes you're going to have an explanation to take to the other person. If you have one side who's all adamant about coming together and the other side that's completely the wrong thing for them and completely uncomfortable, to be able to gain enough trust to understand what's beneath that so that you can help the other person understand. Yeah.
most definitely. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm going through some of these questions, and you've definitely, well, maybe share a little bit more about mediation centers and what role do mediation centers like yours play in building stronger, more peaceful communities? I imagine there's a story that you might be able to share
But you,
there.
you figured out already. I'm a
Yeah,
storyteller.
it's
I'm
great.
sorry.
No,
Get
it's
me
beautiful. I
going.
love it.
You
No,
can't
I love
stop
it.
me.
No, it's great. I'm loving it.
Yeah. Community mediation, it started out as neighborhood justice centers to resolve neighborhood disputes, and it quickly was embraced by the community, the legal community, to address the court backlogs and the cases in court. And so um, that is where it went. And what I've really seen over the last several years is where community mediation has really stepped up is in times of crisis. So, for example, you go back to the Great Recession when there were all these foreclosures, and what happened is they need to rely on community mediation centers to mediate the disputes between homeowners who were losing their homes and lenders, and it worked well. And then, of course, COVID happened and the moratorium on evictions. And I remember being a part of a stakeholder group, and we continued to meet to talk about what's going to happen when the moratorium ends and there's this flood of eviction. And there were over 10,000 people in the state who were behind on their rent, who potentially could be evicted. And so while we were brainstorming, and this was such a magic moment for me, somebody else, not me, for the first time ever said, we should have mediation. They should all be required to mediate. And I was like, did I hear this right? And then the whole committee started talking about, mediation, a mediation program where landlords and tenants would be required to mediate, work out payment plans that should get the landlord their money and enable the tenant to stay. And that was huge. And I remember going back, talking to the other community mediation center executive director saying, this is what's on the table and this is potentially going to happen. And we thought, is that really going to happen? And how are we going to do it? And this is huge. And of course, as you know, the bill was passed, and for a year, this program was in effect. So we were able to help thousands of landlords and tenants. And that was huge. And I think it really brought community mediation to the forefront, that not only are we here helping people and being affordable for everyone, since mediation has grown so much and we have high paid private mediators, we are the only option for people who can't afford to pay. And so that's, key for community mediation, but also in times of crisis that we can put together programs that address high volume needs in a short period of time to help navigate this need and move forward. So really we have come to a whole new place, and I think being a key part of the community and being recognized for that, and that's really huge, and that's really exciting for me. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And additionally, how can local organizations or governments better support early mediation initiatives? I also think this might be a good little plug for anyone listening in as to ways to connect with the Mediation Center Pacific.
Absolutely. So what a wonderful question, because as you know, as a nonprofit, we rely on funding, we rely on donations, we rely on fundraising, and we rely on government grants and contracts. And without those funds, we can't do our work. I should also put in the plug for, we are very fortunate because we have mediators who are professionals who volunteer their time. And without them, if we had to pay them, which they certainly deserve to be paid, our budgets would be more than double. So I think it's important for government entities to recognize the value of our services and that we are providing a very valuable service at the least amount of cost for the community by working with volunteers. And they need to fund us and support us in the work that we do, because ultimately it saves government a lot of money. We did a study last year, and it's a analysis that shows the economic impact of the services of the community mediation centers. And what it showed is, for every dollar that's given to us, we're maximizing on that. We're doing $12 worth of work. And the work that we do, it isn't just about helping people reach agreements, but the impact of those agreements on that family. So for example, take a divorcing couple. So if a divorcing couple can come to mediation and work through their issues and reach agreements to finalize the terms of their divorce and move forward in their lives, one, they've stopped fighting, which is huge, because the most negative impact that a divorce has on children is the fighting. And when parents keep fighting, kids have a hard time in school, they're not learning, they may be juveniles, they start acting out, they need more social services, and on and on and on. And it can have a lifetime impact. But just by resolving those issues, additional community resources for those children aren't needed. Then by resolving their issues in mediation, they're saving money. They're saving a lot of money just by mediating and not being in the court system. But also through mediation, they're reaching agreements that enable them to both move forward, create households, that help meet their needs and the needs of their children. So again, they have less reliance on the social welfare system. Had they spent all their money litigating and fighting in court, they can't have the two households. They need more resources. They're going to rely on state and county support. So this study really shows that the small cost that it costs us to do our services, so $1.5 million, really our impact is $11 million each year. So the impact is huge. So to go back to your question, what can government entities do? They can see the value of mediation and fund our services wholly so we can do what we do well and ensure that we can serve everybody who could benefit from our services.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Because the reality is that I think a lot of organizations, one, they either outsource their human resource, and because I mentioned human resource offices because that's normally where you find folks that might possibly, if they're trained in conflict management, provide those services, or they just don't invest in that, or they have an arbitration clause in their contracts with employees, and I think one thing we haven't talked about is just there's a great loss in funding for organizations having to retrain their employees to try to get them up and going, as opposed to, I think there's that mentality of like, yeah, everyone's replaceable, and I get that, but at what cost? Time, commitment, those relationships once more. So thank you. I know we're coming to, so I just have a few more questions, and then but for someone experiencing a conflict right now, what would be the first step you'd suggest they take?
I would suggest if they need mediation, they would go to our website at www.mediatehawaii.org, and they can complete a form to request mediation. It will get sent to us, and one of our client service specialists will reach out to them to talk to them about their situation, determine if it's appropriate for mediation. And then they'll reach out, our client service specialist will actually reach out to the other person or people that they want to mediate with to determine if they're in agreement, and then set up a day and time to mediate. That's the fastest and most efficient way. You're certainly welcome to call MCP at 808-521-6767 Monday through Friday between 8:30 a.m. and 4:30 p.m. And also remember, if you're on a neighbor island, there are community mediation centers on each island. Their contact information is located on the judiciary's website. So if you Google Hawaii State Judiciary and go to self-help, you'll see the list of all the community mediation centers, their websites, and their phone numbers. And the best way to reach them is exactly the same. You can go to their websites or you can call them directly. So certainly, depending on what island you're on, reach out to the community mediation center on your respective island, and we're happy to help. Yeah.
Thank you. And also, as another little plug, for folks who want to develop their skill sets, I know that you offer a plethora of amazing training opportunities. So folks can definitely, and I'll put it in the summary, the websites and ways to learn more about getting the basic mediation, the advanced mediation, the accelerated divorce, and so much more that you have to offer. Just a So as a personal reflection here and looking forward, what might you say has mediation taught you personally, whether it's about people, relationships, or even yourself?
Well, I've learned so much through mediation, learned a lot about myself. I think we're all works in progress. And so I continue to be a work in progress, but really taking those skills to heart and incorporating them in my own life. I think I mentioned earlier that growing up, I grew up in a household where there was constant fighting. And so I was very uncomfortable around conflict. I hated conflict. And the way I dealt with it was just by being an avoider or accommodator. And having mediation skills and tools, recognizing that, I still don't like conflict, but conflict can lead to better things. it can lead to better understanding, better outcomes, and it's by addressing them. And so having skills and tools and having that mindset that I can engage with somebody that I'm in a conflict with, that I can insert myself if it's wanted. I shouldn't say it that way. I can participate and assist others in addressing conflicts so that relationships don't break down, so organizations don't implode, whether it's a business you're working in or an organization that you're serving as a volunteer, a professional organization. The skills have just been invaluable in my life, and I feel that it has helped to make me a better person. I look back at who I was and who I am, and the strength, we all have strengths and challenges, but the strengths that I have come from learning mediation skills and using them in my own life as well as with other people.
Thank you. And looking ahead, what gives you hope about the future of conflict resolution?
The fact that others are coming to us now and asking for mediation and mediation training, that it isn't me just pitching it all the time. And the other thing that gives me hope, Jose, is that there are so many more opportunities for new mediators. When I first got involved in this, I would have volunteers say, "Oh, I really want to be a private mediator." And I'd say, "Well, there aren't a lot of opportunities for that." And now I'm really happy to be able to say there are lots of opportunities, and people every day I see, they learn the skills, they develop their skills, whether they develop their own mediation practice and are out there, or they get better jobs and they're using those skills in their jobs. So I just think it's really wonderful how far we've come, and I know we're going to continue to grow, and there'll be even more opportunities. And that gives me hope.
Thank you. Um, I wonder if folks, just to get them started, are there any specific resources or books you refer to, organizations besides the Mediation Center of the Pacific?
Well, I
Yeah.
I would strongly encourage them to reach out to the Mediation Center of the Pacific, go to our website, look at our trainings, and sign up for training. It's a great place to start. I always have to think CRA.
Oh, the Conflict Resolution Alliance.
Conflict Resolution Alliance, and
Thank
I'm
you.
sorry, I always stumble. I
It's
know it's
okay.
not
It's
ACR
okay.
Hawaii, it's CRA Hawaii, and I have to remember what
It's,
the acronym stands for.
it's
But a
quite
wonderful,
okay.
vibrant organization where you can interact with other mediators, facilitators, dispute resolution providers, and have engage in discussions and learn from each other. And of course, the national organization, ACR National. If you're an attorney, I'd also highly encourage the American Bar Association Dispute Resolution Section. They have wonderful conferences with great workshops and much to learn. So there's a lot of opportunities to learn and grow. I would encourage you to join them all and keep learning and growing. And there's a lot of literature out there to read. So I would say Google it, get on, read Getting to Yes, Getting Past No, and all those great books that will help you develop your skills.
Well, I just want to say thank you so much, Tracy, for sharing your deep insights, stories, the valuable work you've been doing to foster peace through mediation. It's definitely clear that addressing conflict early and having the skills to navigate it can truly transform relationships, communities, systems. I know you mentioned the conflict resolution lines, and yeah, it's okay. I, I love that it's had its evolution from the Society of Professionals in Dispute Resolution to the Association Conflict Resolution Hawaii to now being the conflict. And thank you as well for earlier I was mentioning you will be our keynote speaker at our annual meeting this Friday at 5 p.m. Hawaii time. Talking about mediation, where we've been, where we are, and where we're going. So I imagine we'll take a deeper dive into this conversation. But folks can learn about that at annual.eventbrite.com. And then I just have to share that, let's see. Oh, if you're interested in learning more about the mediation in the Pacific or getting involved in local conflict resolution efforts, we'll include the links and resources in the show notes, so folks don't feel as though they have to rewind. Um, and as always, thank you so much for tuning in and being here to our peace building initiatives. If you found this episode meaningful, please share it with someone who might benefit and consider subscribing so you don't miss future conversations on building more peaceful and connected communities. Until next time, I'm José Barzola. Stay well, stay open, keep building peace one conversation at a time. Thank you all.